Well, hello and welcome to week one overview. Each week I'll post an overview of the week that's coming up and with maybe special announcements or overview of the assignments posted. Now, there's a lot to go through this week, okay? So let's get started. Okay, so in every week overview, I'll have what's called Professor Greer's This Week in History of American Politics. These will be studies of things that happened politically on the anniversary of our week. You're not going to be tested on them, you're not going to be quizzed on them. These are for your edification, okay? So this is no exception. We're going to go ahead and get started. The first week that we're doing is a case that happened in the United States following World War I. It was an execution that happened against two individuals that were accused of murdering, accused of murder, but the country was going through a difficult time against immigrants, and it's not surprising as we've had periods of times in our history where we're against or have problems with immigrants, but this is no exception. And this one is very significant when it comes to the fight against anarchism, communism, and the threat and distrust of immigrants to the United States. Okay, so the incident that happened was the execution of Niccolo Vanzetti and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, commonly known as Sacco and Vanzetti. They were accused of a double murder of a payroll office, and the problem that occurred during this time, or let's backtrack a little bit. The problems that are occurring this time are the animosity towards immigrants, and it was happening all over the United States. The problem is that nearly half of the United States is from first generation, or a third, I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong stat. A third of the immigrants in the United States are first generation immigrants or children of first generation immigrants, mostly from the Slavic countries, but Germany is involved, Italy is involved in this mass exodus from their countries, mostly because of the oppressive behavior in their own country. So they came to the United States for a better life. Well, what they also brought was the idea of labor socialization, which we now call unions. Now, be that however you look at a union, that's up to you. But that's what was going on in the United States. We don't hear about that so much anymore when we talk about unions. Every once in a while, if you get someone who is an anti-union person, they'll say, well, they're a bunch of communists. That's just not true. We have to be careful when we give labels to people. All right. Well, let's go back to the case. So they were accused of a double murder. And like I said, of murdering a paymaster and a payroll guard. And in Braintree, Massachusetts, which is near Boston, Braintree, if you know your history a little bit, Braintree is where John Adams is from, and his family settled in Braintree. After 3 weeks, they were arrested on some would say some very flimsy evidence that no one could actually pick them out of a lineup, couldn't pick them out, any witnesses that could see them there. The only evidence that they had was that there were two people fleeing from the scene, and Sacco and Vanzetti had a reputation of being anarchists, and so they were pinned with the crime. Let's see. There were revolutionary upheavals that triggered the that were triggered by the war in World War One. 1/30 U.S. population. We covered that. I'm sorry. I'm reading some notes, so I apologize if I'm covering things we've already talked about. So after the heist, 3 days later, Sacco Vanzetti is arrested, and the Attorney General at the time, whose name was Mitchell Palmer, had set up raids to arrest anarchists and suspected communists. So while this was going on, Sacco and Vanzetti are arrested for this crime. The problem is, like we talked about, there's no witnesses. The only witnesses there were was someone who's seen the shootout that went on, wanted to say that they had seen people who looked like Sacco and Vanzetti because they had been around there passing out pamphlets. The arresting officer testified that Sacco and Vanzetti were reaching for weapons when they were arrested. There was no evidence of that except for the one policeman who said that happened. They never could find any arms linked to them. But they were convicted of the murders, and they were electrocuted for the murders. Now, here's the problem that went on. The immigrant population of the United States was convinced it was because they were not, they were immigrants, and that was the reason that they were electrocuted and well, put to death by the state. One of the things that happened later, that when they did look through the transcripts and the judge was giving which he thought was an off the record interview, was quoted as saying that any juror who didn't vote to convict were not true didn't hold true American citizenship. So it almost looked like the fix was on. Okay, all right, let's move on. Okay, since we are a political science class, we need to look at what are the political ramifications of the situation of Sacco and Vanzetti. Well, it reverberated across the oceans when people in other countries found out, especially in Europe, what had happened to them. They were very antagonistic against the United States, was making speeches against the United States, and you have to remember this is post-World War I, so in Germany they're in economic collapse, and they're looking for things to blame, and then you see that a country that perpetuates freedom has set up a trial and wrongfully convicted 2 immigrants. So it helped the socialist cause in Germany, and especially in Italy, helps the socialist cause. Mussolini is going to mention this case quite a bit, and it just was a foreign policy debacle for the United States, and they really don't gain that back until following World War II, where the United States now becomes a world power. The country was still suffering under the viewpoint and did not cease until after World War II. We just covered that. In later years, when United States Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter took his place on the bench, he was totally against the ruling and went after, in his own way, people who were involved in it. But the problem is that there was enough pushback that no particular movement could gain traction against the immigration population until after World War II. And then it's short-lived because now there's more animosity towards Germans, who people are confusing to be Nazis and socialists. And we have to understand, because you were German didn't mean you were a nationalist or a socialist. You stayed underground because you wanted to stay alive. Okay? Well, that's what we have today for our look into the anniversary of political events that happened in the history of the United States. And we'll be doing this every week until we finish. We won't have it on week 8, but 1 through 7, those weeks we'll have Mr. Greers look at the history of political events in the United States. All right? Okay, now let's move on. The first thing we're going to talk about is the video lecture, the syllabus, and class expectations. On week 1, you're going to see this in your content folder. What I will do is I'll go over the syllabus with you. I know there's some of you who haven't ever worked out of a syllabus, and hopefully after that video lecture that'll help you. But remember, I'm available. Contact me anytime if you have a question. Email me when it's not office hours, and I will get back to you as quick as I can with any of your questions or concerns. What I put on this slide, though, is one example of how the end of the syllabus looks when it goes to the work of the class itself. So you see the headings are week and the dates. So it's week 1, and the dates you can see are 8/23/21 through 8/29/21. The name of the week, or the subject of the week, is Syllabus Review and Thinking Critically. You'll see there the readings are the course syllabus. It'll be posted for you. You just click on syllabus and you can read it. You can print it off if you want. That's fine. However you do that and what's easier for you, I would do. So the readings of the course syllabus, the Connect Smart book, Chapter 1. We'll get into that, what that is here in a few minutes. And you'll have 2 lectures. One is the syllabus review and class structure video lecture, and then which is by me, and then you're going to watch a lecture entitled Introduction to Critical Thinking, because that's part of for week 1, that's part of the subject matter, and that's by Professor Ray Lyman. Now on the far right, you'll see assignments due. So due by 11:59 p.m. on 8/29, which is a Sunday. So everything in week 1 that's due is due Sunday night. Now, as a rule, everything's due on Sunday night, but there's going to be a couple of things that aren't. So you need to pay attention when you open up the week in your content folder, week number, and then you need to look at your syllabus when you look at your class schedule, the schedule of work, okay, your work schedule. That's easier to say, isn't it? So you can see there that the student introductions are worth 25 points. We'll get into student introductions in a moment. Your Smart Book reading quiz is worth 30 points. And I put a note on there that there's a bonus point availability in the PreCourse Assessment. And we're going to get into that also. But this is an example, pardon me, this is an example of what you will be doing in class each week. All right? Okay, let's move on. Okay, so now we're looking at the pre-course assessment. The pre-course assessment is designed to find out the student's knowledge of the subject prior to taking the class. So this assessment is not required for you to take. However, I would strongly encourage you to do it, and there's two reasons. Firstly, you have a chance to make at least 25 bonus points or as little as 1 bonus point, depends on how well you do. And then the university collects that data. Your name isn't put on it. It's just a collection of data that the university uses on first-time students. How much political science that they've learned through high school, or if they're homeschooled, if they're, but they wouldn't know that. So basically, your academic life up to your college career, how much you know about political science. Okay? To take the assessment, you go to the content folder of your Blackboard page, or iLearn. It's both the same thing. You click on the pre-course assessment. You take the assessment, and then it's 2 points per question. There's 50 questions, 2 points per question. And you submit when concluded. Okay? Just submit it. It'll ask you to submit, and then that's what you do. And so you have an opportunity to, now that 2 points isn't correct. It's 0.05 points per question. Okay, and I'm sorry I hesitated while I was finishing that up, but I know that's incorrect and I put in the wrong number. It should be 0.5. However, you don't have to remember that now because it's on the instructions of the pre-course assessment as well. If you have any questions on how that's graded or how it's calculated, just contact me and I'll help you out with that. Okay? All right, let's move on. Okay, now we're looking at Chapter 1 and the quiz for Chapter 1. Chapter 1 deals with critical thinking, and the textbook readings for the course are all online. Remember, we're taking the online version of the textbook, and this is the textbook that you're going to be reading every week. Some chapters out of the textbook. And it's going to show up as Smart Book on your content page, but it's all the same thing. It sounds confusing, but it's once you get into it, it's not hard at all. So when you complete the quiz at the end of the reading, you will automatically be awarded 30 points. So each week when you take the quiz, redo the readings and take the quiz, you automatically are awarded 30 points. The quiz is graded, but simply for data retrieval. So you don't need to worry about that. You want to do as well as you can, but because your quizzes are also your study guide for the final. So you want to do as well as you can and do the readings as thoroughly as you can. And so I don't grade them myself. It's automatically graded through SmartBook, and then as soon as you finish it, you click submit and the grade goes on your grade book. But you must complete the reading before you take the quiz. You can't automatically take the quiz. You can't read halfway through and take the quiz. You need to do the reading, okay? So, to take the quiz, you just go to the content folder, which would be week 1, click on the SB, and the week number and chapters will be on there. And then you read the chapters and then take the quiz. And then you submit it when you complete the quiz. All right? As always, if you've got any questions or concerns, do not hesitate to contact me, okay? All right, let's move on. Okay, student introductions. This is your first attempt at the at using the discussion board, okay? But this is not graded. You automatically get 25 points when you post on the student introductions. Basically, I just want to know a little bit about yourself. There's some directions that are on it. It's not mandatory that you hit every point. Tell me who you are, why you're at Cumberland's, your major, what you do, maybe for your local, for your local church. If you have volunteer, do some volunteerism. I like to know about that. And then don't tell me your politics. It's not my business. You can say, I learned to vote, or I started voting when I was, 18, or my school did a voting drive. However, that led you to it. If you vote every year, things like that. But don't tell me your politics. Okay? In all honesty, it's none of my business. That's not what this course is about. This is about learning about American government, but the politics of American government as well. Okay? This is a political science class. But once you do that, you automatically get 25 points. I won't grade them. So to take the student introduction, go to the content folder, click on student introductions. Remember, this is all week 1. Start your thread and follow the directions of the student introductions, okay? Then submit when concluded. And you just earned 25 points just for telling me who you are. And I ask you not to comment on anyone else's thread yet. That'll come up in discussions 2 through 6. This one, you just post yours, and that's it. That's all I need, okay? All right. Like I said, any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact me. All right, let's move on. Okay, so for this week, you have one lecture devoted to the subject matter, which is critical thinking. So it's a Yale lecture, the Yale lecture series. I like using them. So there's a few that I have from the Yale lecture series. This one is an introduction to critical thinking. Now, this guy's a hair dry, but get that information because it's good for your edification. But on this video lecture, you're not graded like you will be in discussions 2 through 6 as part of your grade, as part of the grade for your discussion. And we'll go, those discussions we'll go over in week 2 more thoroughly, but discussion 2, which is week 2 through week 6, discussion 6, you will write about the video lecture, not your reading, the video lectures only. But this one you do not write about. This is for your edification. But know that I can track if you've watched it or not. It's still part of your assignments, okay? So you're not graded for it, but you need to watch it. All right? As always, if you got a question, give me a holler. Okay? Let's move on. Now, you should now be aware of the information and expectations of week 1. It sounds like a lot, but guys, this is the most you're going to have, except possibly week 6. And that's coming up in 6 weeks, by the way. but we'll go over more about what you're going to be expected. Okay? But that was a lot of information. So I don't know about you, but we all need a donut after all that. Okay? All right. We're going to do great, guys. You're going to do great. This is going to be a great class. Don't get scared. In fact, I want you to get excited, because if you have a question or concern, I am the kind of professor that will try to help you as much as I possibly can. Okay? Don't worry. Everything's going to be great. Have a great week one.